Redditors who caught your significant other red-handed while they were in the act of physically cheating. What was their excuse/how did it go down? Found them on the floor of her office. Physically picked him up and threw him off of her. Asked her if she wanted a divorce? She said yes, and that she loved me but was not in love with me. Sat there in disbelief for 15 minutes before I went home, packed up the kids and went to a hotel. I'll try to keep it short. They were sleeping as I got home in the morning after working all night. I grabbed a guitar, sat on the edge of the bed, and played a really bad country song that I made up on the spot. She was yelling at me. I'm just singing at the end of the bed really badly and loudly. He had the cover over his head, probably wondering if I was going to hit him over the head with a guitar. Few years back I lived with a buddy in a large apartment and we always had parties. I was flying back from Florida and wound up getting home when the party was winding down. Everyone was under blankets on the living room floor. Saw my buddy with what was obviously a figure halfway down his sleeping bag doing something to him. He gave me a wide-eyed look and I cracked a smile at him until my girlfriend of 2 years had popped out from the sleeping bag. I was in shock for a few seconds, and Tyler went to talk. I cut him off and said you can keep her. Drove across town to my mom's that night, done cried like a bitch too. Went to a party with my girlfriend. She was doing her own thing with her friends and I was just drinking with mine, having a good time. Later in the night I went looking for her and couldn't find her. Oh well, it was a bigger house. Went into one of the bathrooms and saw her blowing some random dude in the shower. My first reaction was to punch him, but instead, I just laughed and walked out. She ran after me and tried to apologize. I just ignored her out the door and my sober buddy drove me home. We were horrified, but fuck it at that point. I haven't said a word to her since, almost 2 years ago. I haven't caught anyone I was dating cheating, but caught a very good friend's girlfriend in a similar situation. We were at a pretty big party. I go upstairs to use the bathroom. When I come out of the bathroom I hear moaning coming from the room across the hall. The door isn't all the way shut, so I smile and decide I am going to fling the door open, yell to scare them, then shut the door. It will be a funny joke. When I fling the door open I see my buddy's girlfriend on all fours on the floor with some dude behind her plowing her like she's a Nebraska cornfield. Everybody froze. We stared at each other in shock for about 5 seconds, then I slammed the door shut. She chased after me and begged me not to tell him. She even offered to give me money or whatever I wanted to stay quiet. I told her what I wanted was to never lay eyes on her again. I pulled him aside, told him, and then the two of us left the party. He dumped her the next day. She was pissed at me as if it were my fault she was cheating and got caught. I got married far too young and for all the wrong reasons. Tip for all men: jack off before making any important decisions. We immediately went into a troubled marriage phase. I was working long hours to make up for the loss of what little income she was making when she quit her job to play online games all day. What little time we spent together we spent fighting or ignoring each other. A couple of months later, things are better. Not good, but better. I decide to knock off work early to take her out on a date. I open the door and hear the unmistakable sound of my wife being plowed. I walk into the bedroom and see some dude plowing my wife and going at it good, so I just lean on the door and watch for a minute, then finally I clear my throat and panic ensues. He grabs his clothes off the floor and bolts out the window and runs bareheaded to the car parked in my neighbor's driveway. My now ex-wife starts crying and begging and pleasing. I just say I'm going to my best friend's house for a few days, be gone when I get back. She decided she doesn't want to have an amicable, uncontested divorce. What she doesn't know is the dude that plowed her called me like 2 weeks later, wanting to meet and talk. He told me she had been flirting with a bunch of dudes in chat rooms, and was pretending she was single, which is why he was there. I asked him if he'd testify to that under oath, and he said he would. When she saw him in court, her face went white and she immediately started talking to her lawyer. After the guy testified, the judge gave her a "you're such a whore" look and awarded me an annulment. Haven't spoken to her since. In college, wearing a suit and on my way to a job interview on campus. I walked by my girlfriend's house and used my key to let myself in. I had had a drink with her the night before at a bar with her friends, and knew something bad was going to happen. I could just feel it. I let myself in, walked upstairs, and found her sleeping naked in bed with a guy from the bar. I started hitting him in the face. He woke up and we tussled for a second, then I demanded he get out. He got his things together and left. She followed me down the street back to my house in her pajamas crying, and I just locked her out. Then I walked straight to my interview and crushed it. Still working here 2 years later. My dad walked in on my mom and his best friend plowing in my mom and dad's bed. His best friend pulled a gun on him. My dad grabbed me and left. I do drugs now. Came home early from my second job to spend time with her and our infant son. I noticed an extra pair of shoes in the entryway, so I creeped in and up the stairs. I hit a creaky one and I hear them both jump up, and she meets me at the door zipping up a sweater, her pants still unbuttoned. He is still putting his pants on as I look into the room and start yelling. She pushed at me to go downstairs so we could argue somewhere other than outside our sleeping son's room, and once we are in the living room I started yelling harder than I ever had before. I don't remember what I said, I kinda blanked it, but I'm sure I referenced how we were engaged and he was my best man and them trying to calm me down. I stormed out of the house and walked up the street to where his wife, her maid of honor, was working and calmly asked her to come outside to talk. I told her what happened and left her to deal with him as she saw fit. I then called up a buddy of mine and told him to meet me at the bar so I could get drunk but not alone. I was too young to remember this, but my mom, dad, first stepdad, and my dad's best friend all agree on this one story. When I was about 3, my pops came home from work one day. Saw the neighborhood handyman's truck out front. Assumed he was there to fix the pump. Dad walked inside, down the hall. Found the handyman, my stepdad, and my mom in bed. From my dad, it had been a long day. I was tired. Went to the kitchen, made a couple sandwiches. Then got in my buddy's truck and left. Fast forward 25 years later. Mom's been married 5 times. Cheated on all of them with the next one. First stepdad and my dad are buddies. He considers him banging my mom a favor because it gave him a reason to get rid of her cheating ass. Wasn't the first time she cheated, just the only time he caught her in the act. Backstory: my boyfriend was addicted to cocaine, like disappear all weekend, blow his entire paycheck/tax refunds and show up at my house on Monday with flowers, addicted. We were fairly young, and had been dating for about 3 months. His house was party central, so my sister, friend, and I were there drinking one day with him and his friends. He goes outside to smoke a cigarette, which he only did when drinking, and my friend goes out there too. I remember having this awful, gut-wrenching feeling a couple minutes later. I just knew. And then he walks back in. An hour later my sister tells me that my friend and him kissed, hurt worse than if he would have just effed her, and all I kept saying was I knew it. I punched him in the face and left. 7 years later. He's been clean for about 5 years, he just quit one day after Christmas, said he was tired. He's a completely changed man, so it always pisses me off when people say once a cheater, always a cheater, because that's bull. I went through 2 years of hell with him, but I absolutely completely trust him now. We're engaged and expecting our first. I saw my, then, girlfriend on the street with some guy. They were physically comfortable, holding hands, butt touching, etc. After a while I decided to confront her. She tells me he's only her cousin. Turns out he was actually her cousin. I did. We'd been together for over 2 years and had been out drinking quite heavily. Sat in a friend's bar after hours. We realize we haven't seen her or another friend in a while. We tracked them down in the disabled toilets. Her excuse was that she was drunk and doesn't actually remember doing anything. We broke up soon afterwards. I didn't actually feel that hurt. I think the relationship was over before it happened anyway, and it wasn't the nicest thing to see, but it made it easier for me to finish with her. I was 16 years old and had been with my boyfriend for 6 months. He was my world. I was typically 16, madly in love, and of course I thought we would be high school sweethearts forever and ever. He was 17, about to turn 18. So we go to a girl's 16th birthday party and we're all having a good time. I've never been a drinker, so I'm hanging out looking after my drunk girlfriends. I can't find my dude, so I go with my best friend looking for him. Open the door of the bedroom of the girl whose party it was, to find them effing. Of course. They didn't notice us. Walk into another room with my best friend and discuss this issue. I decided to go for the metaphorical jugular. I went and found her dad. He burst in the door, saw exactly what I did and lost his shit. My then ex-boyfriend got a hit to the head and was literally thrown out in his underwear. The party was over after that, everyone had to leave, she wasn't allowed to see him anymore and wasn't allowed to go to parties for months afterwards. I dumped him the next day, he'd taken off after being thrown out, and of course, he blamed me for the trouble he was in because I told her dad, who got hold of his conservative Christian mother, who grounded him too. I was on cloud 9 knowing I'd caused the both of them so much misery. I was with my ex for 4 years. Now, I can't really say I'm surprised. Bro tip, if she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you. Woke up one night to the sound of her getting off in the living room. Decided to get up and see if she wanted help. Walk out and she's got a guy under her, one of our friends. I wasn't even mad, disappointed, I didn't really feel any strong emotion as a response, or maybe I was shocked into numbness. I just turned, walked back into the bedroom, grabbed a small box and tossed in some basics from the bathroom, toothbrush, etc. She didn't even notice. Grabbed my base, walked into the living room and said hope he's got your rent covered. And walked out. It bothered me a lot for a couple years, now I look at that moment as liberation though. We were at a party, she got drunk, I randomly walked around a corner to see her making out with some dude. I walked up, calmly told her we were done and walked off. About an hour later she found me and begged forgiveness and pleaded with me, saying she got too drunk. I drove her home, held her hair while she puked, got her water and lied awake on the couch all night. Then in the morning when I decided I could forgive her, she dumped me. Maybe she realized she wasn't lesbian enough to be attracted to a giant pussy. Tripped, fell, landed on his dick,